2:38 a.m., a city asleep, suddenly torn awake. The sky lit up like dawn. The world witnessed one of the fastest and largest military campaigns in modern history. This is the story of Desert Storm. And the storm whose thunder still echoes more than 30 years later. August 1990. The Iran-Iraq war had ended only 2 years earlier. 8 years of bloodshed had left Iraq crippled with debt. Yet Saddam Hussein's ambition burned brighter than ever. With oil prices falling and creditors demanding payment, Saddam looked south. Kuwait, small, rich, defenseless. On the 2nd of August, 100,000 Iraqi troops surged across the border. Within 48 hours, Kuwait was gone. The world trembled. Control of Kuwait meant control of 1/5 of the planet's oil reserves. Energy markets spun into chaos. Stability in the Middle East hung by a thread. The United Nations condemned the invasion, yet America could not strike back immediately. A hasty attack might look like imperial conquest. The coalition would splinter before the first shot was fired. Washington chose a different weapon: diplomacy. For months, President George H.W. Bush and Secretary of State James Baker crisscrossed the globe. Riyadh, Cairo, London, Paris, meeting after meeting, handshake after handshake. Piece by piece, they built something unprecedented: a coalition of 35 nations. But Saddam Hussein was not idle. He had his own gambit. Scud missiles screamed out of the desert sky, crashing into Israel. Explosions tore through Tel Aviv. Families huddled in gas masks, terrified the next warhead would carry poison gas. If Israel struck back, the coalition would fracture. Arab allies would walk away. If America failed to defend Israel, U.S. credibility would collapse. The entire world held its breath. America responded with speed. MIM-104 Patriot missile batteries rushed into Israel and Saudi Arabia, lit up the night sky. White trails arced upward, intercepting Saddam's Scuds in midair. The Patriots were imperfect, their success rate debated, but their symbolism mattered more than statistics. They became the shield of the coalition. Israel raged, but obeyed. At America's request, it fired not a single shot in return. The coalition held. It was one of Desert Storm's first victories. Not of tanks or jets, but of diplomacy. A single misstep could have unraveled everything. Instead, the alliance endured, and the sword of war was ready to be drawn. With diplomacy secured, America drew its blade. The operation was codenamed Desert Shield, the largest military airlift and sea lift since World War II. Cargo ships crossed the oceans. Giant C-5 Galaxy and C-141 Starlifter aircraft thundered across the skies. Even civilian airlines, Delta, United, American, were drafted into service, ferrying troops and equipment into the desert. Within months, the barren sands of Saudi Arabia transformed into a fortress. Over 500,000 American troops were deployed. Yes, you heard that right. 500,000 soldiers. Alongside them, 200,000 coalition troops from Britain, France, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and beyond. 6 U.S. aircraft carriers sailed into the Persian Gulf. Thousands of Abrams tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles, and Apache helicopters stood ready. This was not just an army, it was a message. Saddam Hussein was about to face the the full weight of the world's most powerful military machine. But such strength carried its own enemy: logistics. In the desert, each soldier needed 20 to 30 liters of water every day. The Abrams tank consumed hundreds of gallons of fuel just to travel a few miles. Aircraft, helicopters, artillery demanded endless rivers of supplies. And so, a massive supply network came to life. Convoys of fuel trucks stretched for miles. C-130 Hercules transports lifted cargo day and night. Saudi ports and airfields turned into hubs of constant motion. A U.S. general would later admit, "We won Desert Storm not just with Abrams or F-117s. We won because we never ran out of water, fuel, or bullets." Behind the spectacle of tanks and missiles was an invisible war, a war fought and won by logisticians. And with the sword now forged, the time had come to strike. January 17th, 1991, 2:38 in the morning. Baghdad, a city asleep, suddenly torn awake. From ships in the Persian Gulf, dozens of Tomahawk cruise missiles launched. They hugged the ground, weaving through valleys and deserts, guided by satellites and digital maps. Their mission: radar stations, command centers, communications hubs. Seconds later, explosions rocked the city. The night sky turned to fire. And then, America revealed its ace, the F-117 Nighthawk, the world's first operational stealth fighter. A single pilot commanded this machine, 20.1 meters long, 13.2 meters wide, 3.8 meters tall. Empty weight, 14 tons. Maximum takeoff, nearly 24. Inside, up to 2.3 tons of precision-guided bombs. 2 General Electric F404 engines. Not the most powerful of their time, but enough to push it near Mach 1. A range of 1,700 kilometers, a ceiling of 13.7 kilometers. Yet numbers alone did not make the world tremble. Its true weapon was stealth. Hundreds of faceted surfaces, every angle calculated to scatter radar waves. Coated in radar-absorbing material, air intakes shielded, exhaust cooled to hide its heat. On radar screens, it was nothing more than a sparrow. A true ghost plane. While fighters across the world still relied on brute force and speed, the F-117 forged a new era, the power of invisibility. It didn't need dogfights, it didn't need supersonic speed. It appeared from the shadows, struck with surgical precision, and vanished. On the opening night of Operation Desert Storm, 36 F-117s pierced Iraq's dense air defenses. They struck 31 strategic targets, and not a single aircraft was lost. That is why it was called the Lord of the Night. In the 1990s, the F-117 Nighthawk stood as a symbol of absolute dominance. A cold declaration to the world: when you cannot see, you have already lost. Invisible to radar, slipping past Iraq's dense defenses, it carried laser-guided bombs, GBU-10s and GBU-27s, designed to pierce hardened bunkers with surgical precision. This was more than an airstrike. It was the debut of stealth warfare. For decades, radar had ruled the skies. Tonight, radar was blind. Within hours, Iraq's air defense network collapsed into chaos. Command bunkers were gone, communications severed, generals cut off from their troops. CNN broadcast it live. Viewers around the globe saw war as it happened. Missiles flashing, fireballs rising, Baghdad under siege. For the first time in human history, modern war was on television. Families sat in living rooms, eyes fixed on the screen, watching destruction unfold in real time. General Norman Schwarzkopf called it cutting off the head of the snake. Don't waste lives grinding against frontline troops. Strike the brain, paralyze command and control, leave the enemy blind, deaf, broken. But the gamble was real. Iraq's radar network and thousands of SAM launchers were still deadly. Hundreds of Scud missiles remained, each one capable of shattering the fragile coalition if fired into Israel or Saudi Arabia. And with the whole world watching live, even a single mistake, even a single civilian tragedy could turn global opinion against America. Yet the strike succeeded. Stealth proved unstoppable. A US official later declared, "In a matter of hours, we bombed Iraq from the 20th century back to the pre-industrial age." The opening night did more than cripple Iraq. It signaled the dawn of a new era. Stealth, precision, and media. From this night forward, war itself had changed. The storm had begun, but America and its allies were not yet ready to unleash their ground forces. Instead, they chose a different weapon: the skies. The plan was deliberate: break Iraq before a single boot touched Kuwaiti sand, destroy Iraq's air defenses, cripple its supply lines and infrastructure, cut off command and control, shatter morale. General Norman Schwarzkopf called it tightening the noose day by day until the enemy collapses under the weight of his own confusion. This was not a single strike. It was a relentless 38-day campaign, the most concentrated aerial bombardment since World War II. Over 100,000 sorties flown, more than 88,000 tons of bombs dropped, 2,800 aircraft rotating day and night. B-52 Stratofortresses rained bombs across Iraqi troop concentrations, shaking the desert floor. F-15s and F-16s ruled the skies, shooting down any Iraqi aircraft that dared to launch. A-10 Warthogs prowled low and slow, tearing through tanks and armored columns with their 7-barrel cannons. And then came the revolution: precision strikes. For the first time in history, the world saw smart bombs in action. Laser-guided munitions that could hit a bridge, a bunker, even a single doorway. Tomahawk cruise missiles weaving through city streets, turning at right angles, striking with uncanny accuracy. American news networks called it surgical warfare. The Pentagon showed footage of bombs slipping neatly through ventilation shafts. A new image of war: precise, high-tech, unstoppable. But the truth was more complicated. Fewer than 10% of all bombs were actually smart. The rest were traditional iron bombs. And when those missed their mark, civilians paid the price. Meanwhile, Saddam Hussein struck back with his own weapon, the Scud missile. Night after night, Soviet-made Scuds arced into the sky, crashing into Saudi Arabia and Israel. Politically, each missile mattered more than its warhead. If Israel retaliated, the Arab members of the coalition might walk away. If America failed to stop the Scuds, the coalition's unity could collapse. Patriot missile batteries were rushed into action. Their launches lit up the night sky, interceptors streaking upward in fiery trails. To the television audience, Patriots looked like a miracle shield. In reality, their success rate was far lower than claimed, but perception mattered more than statistics. Israel, furious but restrained, held its fire. The coalition remained intact. The Scud war had become a chess match, more about politics than explosives. For Iraqi soldiers, the air campaign was devastating. Day after day, units dug into the desert were bombarded without mercy. Supply lines were cut. Fuel and food ran out. Soldiers cowered underground, listening to the thunder above. One Iraqi conscript later confessed, "We never saw the enemy. We only heard the sky exploding. Every day, we felt smaller and smaller until we were nothing." By the third week, desertions began. Some abandoned their tanks and walked into the desert, hands raised to surrender. Entire formations withered before the ground assault even started. And while Iraq's army crumbled, the world watched in awe. CNN turned war into a nightly broadcast. Families tuned in not to sitcoms or sports, but to watch missiles streak across Baghdad. This changed war forever. Victory was no longer only about battlefields. It was about perception, about politics, about the living rooms of the world. For 38 relentless days, the skies belonged to the coalition. Iraq's defenses collapsed. Its army was weakened, isolated, demoralized. The stage was set. The sword had been sharpened, and now it was time to strike the decisive blow on the ground. Wars are not won by bullets and bombs alone. Behind every strike, every tank, every jet, lies a hidden battle, the battle of logistics. And in 1991, the coalition faced an enemy as ruthless as Saddam himself, the Arabian Desert. The Persian Gulf theater was unforgiving. By day, the desert scorched at over 115 degrees Fahrenheit. By night, the temperature plunged toward freezing. Sandstorms rolled in like walls of dust, blinding pilots, clogging engines, choking soldiers. One U.S. Marine remembered, "It wasn't the Iraqis that scared us. It was the desert. The desert could kill you just as easily as a bullet." Keeping 500,000 American troops and 200,000 coalition soldiers alive required nothing less than a logistical miracle. Each man needed 20 to 30 liters of water every day. Abrams tanks burned hundreds of gallons of fuel just to move a few miles. Helicopters and jets demanded endless rivers of fuel and ammunition. Every 24 hours, thousands of tons of supplies had to flow into the desert. Convoys of fuel trucks stretched for miles across the sands. C-130 Hercules aircraft flew day and night. Saudi ports and airfields turned into a non-stop lifeline of cargo. General William Pagonis, the logistics commander, put it simply: amateurs talk about tactics, professionals talk about logistics. In Desert Storm, logistics was the battle. And it wasn't just supplies. This was a coalition of 35 nations, 35 armies, 35 languages, 35 different sets of equipment. Yet somehow, they moved, fought, and operated as one. American A-class aircraft kept the skies organized. British and French troops fought alongside U.S. divisions. Saudi and Egyptian forces held flanks. Every link had to hold, or the chain would break. For the soldiers, the waiting was its own kind of war. Weeks in the desert, sweating under the sun, freezing at night, eating sand with every meal. Letters from home, music from a cassette player, even a simple game of cards became weapons against fear and fatigue. One soldier wrote in his journal, "Every day felt like eternity. The only thought that kept us going was this: when it begins, we must finish it fast." And so, while bombs fell on Baghdad, another war raged in silence. A war of water, of fuel, of sand and steel. By late February, the coalition had achieved the impossible. They had built, supplied, and sustained the largest military force since World War II. And now, the sword was ready to strike. For 6 relentless weeks, the skies belonged to the coalition. Iraq had been battered, its defenses shattered, its soldiers demoralized. And yet, Kuwait remained under occupation. The time had come for the final stroke. What followed would become one of the fastest, most decisive campaigns in modern military history: the 100-Hour War. Many asked, why wait so long before sending in ground forces? The answer was strategy. General Norman Schwarzkopf and Defense Secretary Dick Cheney feared a premature assault would mire America in bloody urban warfare. Another Vietnam, this time in the desert. Instead, they chose patience. Let air power weaken Iraq, then unleash the ground assault with overwhelming speed and precision. February 24th, 1991. Operation Desert Saber begins. U.S. Marines stormed into southern Kuwait. Loud, violent, deliberate. Their attack was the hammer, designed to fix Saddam's forces in place. But the real blow was hidden. To the west, thousands of Abrams tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles swept through the desert in a wide arc. The maneuver was called the left hook. Bold, unpredictable, devastating. While Iraq braced for a frontal fight, the coalition struck their flank and their rear. An American officer recalled, "By the time Saddam realized what we were doing, his army was already surrounded." Steel clashed with steel. Abrams tanks with their Chabam armor and 120mm guns proved nearly invincible. They could engage Iraqi T-72s at over 2 miles, often destroying them before Iraqi crews even knew they were under attack. Thermal sights gave U.S. gunners the ability to fight at night as if it were daylight. Engagement after engagement, Iraqi brigades were annihilated in minutes. One U.S. tanker described it simply: "It wasn't a fair fight. We could see them, we could hit them, they couldn't touch us." Within 48 hours, Iraq's defensive line collapsed. Thousands of soldiers surrendered without firing a shot. Coalition units were overwhelmed, not by resistance, but by the sheer number of prisoners. A British commander joked, "We ran out of prisoner cages faster than we ran out of ammunition." Yet not all Iraqi units fled. The Republican Guard, Saddam's elite divisions, fought hard north of Kuwait City. But even they could not withstand the precision strikes and armored assaults. Piece by piece, they too were broken. Then came the highway of death. February 26th, hundreds of Iraqi vehicles fled north on Highway 80, retreating toward Basra. Coalition aircraft spotted them. Wave after wave of strikes turned the road into an inferno. Tanks, trucks, buses, all incinerated. The images shocked the world, miles of twisted metal and charred bodies. To some, it was proof of America's dominance. To others, it looked like massacre. February 28th, 1991. After just 100 hours of ground combat, President George H.W. Bush announced to the nation, "Kuwait is liberated. Iraq's army is defeated. Our military objectives are met." Across America, parades erupted. Soldiers returned to heroes' welcomes. Desert Storm was hailed as a flawless victory, swift, decisive, overwhelming. But history would remember that victory on the battlefield does not always mean victory in the years to come. In just 100 hours of ground combat, the coalition achieved what once seemed impossible. Kuwait was free. Iraq's army was broken. The world hailed America's might. But wars do not end with declarations. They leave echoes, political, strategic, human, that linger for decades. Soldiers return to heroes' welcomes. For a nation scarred by Vietnam, Desert Storm was redemption, proof that America could fight and win. Yet one question lingered. Why stop? Why not march on Baghdad and remove Saddam Hussein once and for all? The answer lay in strategy. The coalition's mission, as defined by the United Nations, was simple: liberate Kuwait, nothing more. Taking Baghdad meant urban combat, house-to-house fighting, tens of thousands of casualties. It meant a power vacuum in Iraq, with no plan for what came next. Washington feared another Vietnam. And so Bush and his generals made the call: stop at the gates, leave Saddam in power. The costs of war were immense. Iraq lost over 100,000 soldiers killed or wounded. 60,000 were captured. Civilian infrastructure was crippled. Electricity, water, industry in ruins. Ordinary Iraqis faced famine, disease, despair. As Iraqi troops retreated, they set fire to more than 600 Kuwaiti oil wells. Black smoke choked the skies for months. An environmental disaster, visible from space. Coalition losses were minimal by comparison, fewer than 400 dead. Yet controversy erupted over the Highway of Death, where retreating Iraqi columns were annihilated. To many, it looked less like battle and more like slaughter. As one journalist wrote, "It was victory, yes, but victory was shadows." Desert Storm reshaped modern warfare. Technology had arrived: stealth, precision-guided munitions, satellite intelligence, AWACS command. Diplomacy had triumphed. A coalition of 35 nations united under one banner. Speed had become doctrine. 100 hours of ground war, redefining rapid dominance. But it also revealed limits. Technology could win battles, but not resolve politics. A lightning war could liberate Kuwait, but not guarantee lasting peace. Saddam Hussein survived. He crushed uprisings at home. He defied sanctions. And 12 years later, America returned to Iraq. This time, not for 100 hours, but for more than a decade of grinding war. Operation Desert Storm was more than a battle. It was a statement. In 100 hours, the United States showed the world what overwhelming force, technology, and unity could achieve. But it also reminded us that victory on the battlefield is not the same as victory in history. The storm ended in 1991. Its thunder rolled on for decades. If this war were to happen today, would the outcome still be the same as in 1991? And do you think the US was right to stop at Kuwait instead of advancing to Baghdad? Share your thoughts in the comments below.